Hey guys, so welcome back. So what I'm going to be doing today is I want to show you guys how to make a loading screen on your Roblox game. I've been making a game for one of my kids in their YouTube channels, and so I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure certain things out. And one of the things that I wanted was a good looking loading screen when the game started. So basically what we're going to do is add a screen that when the game first comes up, you get like some kind of logo or background, whatever, kind of like as it loads the background components. And what you load in there during that time is up to you guys. I'm just going to show you how to pop up something that overtakes the screen GUI for the player, and then after a certain duration it'll disappear. So what you need to do is put these components in what's called replicated first, and the replicated first folder in your workspace, I guess it's not the workspace, in your studio, replicated first is what gets replicated to the client when it first loads. And so the first thing we're going to do is add a local script rather, and we're going to call, I don't know why it always has that there, we're going to say loading screen, and the first thing that you want to do is set the remove default loading screen, and so basically that's a method of the replicated first service. And so what we want to do is, let's say we want to define replicated service. I'm going to do a local variable called get service replicated first. So that way I can use that instead of calling this game :get service. I can just call this variable instead. So basically replicated first. So I'm going to say replicated first dot. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it's not a dot. It's a colon, and we want to say remove default loading screen. So that means now it's going to have no default loading screen. So honestly, I don't know what that looks like without doing the rest, but I guess it just kind of loads some boring stuff or something. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't show anything at all. Who knows? Okay, so the other thing I want to do is get the service for the starter GUI, and because I want to overlay this loading screen on the starter GUI. So we're going to go ahead and say local starter, actually I want to capitalize starter GUI. I don't know if that's capitalized with the UI. We'll go with that, and we'll say game dot, or colon get service starter GUI. Okay, so now we're going to say starter GUI. What I'm trying to do with the starter GUI is I want to get rid of like the chat box and all that other stuff, and so we're going to go ahead and say set, I think it's set GUI, core GUI enabled. We want to basically enumerate all of the core GUI components. Core GUI type dot, type dot all, and we want to set it to false. So that gets rid of like the chat box and everything else. So we're gonna have to turn those back on after it loads, but that'll at least get rid of it at first. One of the things we also want to do is set the GUI. What's it called? It's basically ignore like the GUI inset stuff, and so it'll full screen all the way across the whole desktop. And so so basically that is we're going to do that under the screen GUI. So I'm going to go ahead and say local screen GUI equals actually I don't think I have this ready yet, because the next thing I need to do is set the screen GUI. So before we finish that, the next thing under replicated first is we need to make a screen GUI. So I'm going to go ahead and make a screen GUI. We're going to rename this and call it loading. I don't know, that sounds like a good one. I don't know, loading or loading screen or something like that. So that's a screen GUI. So if we go over to like look at this, you should be, and the way you would design this screen GUI so that you know what it looks like is you would put it underneath starter GUI like this, and then so we can see it. And then if I add like a component, like I'm going to add a frame, and we're going to call this frame background. Background fill, and then the background color is pure white, which is fine. You can do that. That's up to you. But what I want to do is anchor point is 0, 0, so I want it to anchor to the top left corner. But then I want the size to be a scale of 1, so it goes across the whole screen. I don't need any offset. So it should look like that, scale of 1, 0, 1, 0. So it just basically fills the entire screen is what it's doing. So, but it's kind of ugly, right? Having a just straight up white would blind you. So let's go ahead and just kind of set some other color. Maybe we'll do like a blue for now. And so now you've got this background fill GUI. So this loading screen will now take over the whole screen. So you inside this frame, you could add additional frames. Like we'll add another one here, and let's change this anchor point to 0.5, 0.5. And oops, I'm editing the wrong object. I want to go to this one, and we'll say logo or something like that. And we'll put the anchor point for this at 0.5, 0.5. And so now you can see it's kind of like half off the edge here, like it's only the bottom right corner of that. So that's okay, because that means I'm anchoring in the center of the box. Now for the position, what I'd want to do is, if I want it dead center, I want to say scale 0.5 and scale 0.5. Now the box is literally dead center. That's your anchor point there, and you've got the box all around it. So the size, we can set this. I personally don't want to use an offset, because if you use an offset, you have to be really careful with certain screen sizes. Like if you have a mobile screen or something that's much smaller than your desktop, if you're using offsets, which are literal pixels size, then it might take up too much screen space or whatever on some other device. So really you want to focus the best you can on using scales only. So let's pretend like we want this to fill, 25% of the screen. So I'm going to say 0.25, 0.25. So now we've got this box that's littered 25% of, that doesn't really look like 25%, but you get the idea. It's 0.2, so it's 0.25 width of total width, and then 0.25 width of total height. And so that's what you're getting, is a box that's 0.25 width and height of total. Okay, so now we've got this box like that in the center. It says logo. You don't have to have backgrounds. Like if you want to just get rid of these backgrounds, you can just hit transparent full, and so then it doesn't matter what the background color is. And now, so if you wanted to, you could easily throw a logo into this box, or text. In this case, we're just going to throw some text. I'm going to say text label, and the label's here in the center. And I wanted to do an anchor point of 0.5, and then I want a position of 0.5. And so now it's dead center in this logo frame. And I don't want a background on this one, so transparency high. Let's go ahead and set this one just so you can see where the box difference is. I'm going to go ahead and set it to, like, I don't know, the different blues. So there you go. So there's our ugly box. And we can do other fun things, like there are some UI components, and I'll just do that really quick. You say like UI corner, and if we set this corner, we should be able to make this box a little bit rounder on the edges so it doesn't look so ugly. So there you can see I've got a round box now. So we'll do 20 UI corner. So UI corner, it modifies the properties of whatever its parent is, and so that's why it's modifying the frame logo. Okay, so text label, we'll go ahead and leave it right there. I'm going to go ahead and go down to font size, and we'll say bangers, or font face rather, bangers, and then I'm going to say text scaled, so it'll fill the entire text label box, which is fine with me. To be honest with you, I probably want to just take this text box and put it in the center. So let's actually go back to position, and let's go to scale for the Y, and I'm going to say point. Well, let's just not quite put it dead center, because like maybe you want something underneath of it. So we're going to go ahead and say like 0.2, kind of puts it at the top half right there. And I don't like the size. Again, size of offsets is probably not a good idea. So I'm going to say this needs to be half of the total width, and maybe 0.25 of the total height. Ooh, that's crazy. Oh, that has an offset. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So a quarter of the total height and half of the total width gives us a text box of that size. And okay, so now we've got a text label here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this guy. We're going to paste another one into. So now I've got two text labels with exact same properties, which is fine. But now what I want to do is I'm going to take this new one that I just pasted in here, and we're going to go ahead and say position, not X, because I want it center. It's the position Y. So now I'm going to go ahead and say like 0.4. Okay, we know that the scale height is 0.25, and we know the original one was 0.2. So to put it directly below the other box, exactly at where the other box ends, it would be 0.2 plus 0.25, which would be 0.45. So you can have that, and you can see, like, as they tab between these, you can see the borders literally butting up against each other. So that's how you would use the scale to make sure your objects are identical place. One right below the other. Okay, so then the size, I don't want the size as big because I kind of want this one to be like a loading label, something like that. And oops, I don't want any offset. Sorry, scroll's doing funny stuff. Okay, so text, we'll say loading. All right, and then for this one, we'll say my new game, my new epic game. Yeah, there we go. Oh, actually, so the text label probably, because I have it auto-scaling the text, you can see clearly that the font's not big enough for what I want. So what we'll probably do then is for size on this one, let's just go ahead and say like 0.9. So it'll be almost the full width. I mean, you could even just say 1. It'll fill the whole thing. It's probably fine. All right, so there you go. And you can name these if you want. You could say like game name, and this one could be like loading. There you go. So now we've got this janky looking background loading screen. So, and you can see what it looks like, right? Because we're editing it on the tab here that lets you see what the game, three-dimensional game world looks like. But we've got this GUI screen that's basically on top of everything that you see. So now that we're done modifying it, I'm going to go ahead and drag this back out again into replicated first. So now it disappears because replicated first doesn't show you anything, like you can't edit it. It's just available to use at another time. So now I've got this loading screen here. So let's go back to the local script. And actually, I'm going to rename this called startup, maybe. Something like that. Okay, so screen GUI equals. Sorry, my notes are down here. Okay. Screen GUI equals. We need to basically define this variable to the screen GUI we just created. So basically that would be, it's under replicated first. So we have already got a replicated first variable, so I can just reference that. And then I can say dot, and it should be populate the items that are there. So we know that it is called loading, right? That's the name of this GUI. So I'm going to go ahead and say screen GUI, my replicated first dot loading. So one of the important things that you want to do is, and I think I mentioned this earlier, was the ignore GUI inset. And that basically means it's just going to populate and fill the entire screen. It doesn't matter if it's a chat box or leaderboards or whatever. It's going to fill and overlay edge to edge of the device that's displaying it. So we'll go ahead and do that. Even though we hid a lot of the GUI items here, right? All the GUI items rather, we're still going to set that because it's going to make sure that it's always widescreen. So the other thing we need to do also is we need to get the player GUI, right? Because we need to put this on the player's GUI. And so actually that means that we also need to get the player. So that's an important thing. So we'll go ahead and say local players equals get service players. And then we'll say local player equals players dot local player. So now I have a player variable that's specific just for this player. So when they load up, it's going to control that one player's stuff. Okay, so now that I've got that player, I can do a player GUI. So now the player GUI equals player dot player GUI. I believe that's what I need. So now I come back over here to screen GUI dot parent equals player GUI. Look at that. So now I basically just took and loaded the starter GUI that we made, that loading GUI, hid all the chat boxes and stuff, grabbed the player GUI, and then made this starter screen GUI thing on top of the player GUI, or set it on the player GUI. So now if you were to load the game right now, you would see, we should see that blue screen, and also it won't disappear, right? Because it's just going to be the only thing that they see. So I'm surprised that didn't hide, but is what it is. So my new epic game loading, so now you can see, but nothing else happens, right? Because the script doesn't hide it after the game's loaded. So we're going to go ahead and hit stop. And let's go back to the startup script. And what we want to check for, you can check for a bunch of stuff. This would be like where you would say check for items loaded whatever method you're going to use there. I'll do another video on that because that's probably a whole topic on its own. But wait for game load. We're just going to use this basic one. It's not necessarily the best in my opinion because I don't think it like really tells you if it's loaded or not. But we're going to say is not game loaded, then game loaded wait. So basically we're going to wait till the game's loaded, and it'll just yield to this command until the game's actually loaded. So pauses right there for hopefully not very long. In my experience, it's been very fast, and so you won't notice much of a problem there. In fact, like it's usually like 0 seconds. So that's why I don't know if that really works as well as it should, which is why I think we should put in our own items here to load whatever graphic objects, sound objects, etc. that you want to make sure are loaded before the GUI comes on board. So the thing I'd like to do too is just to make sure that loading screen is displayed so that people can see it. It's kind of like an intro to your YouTube channel. I'm going to go ahead and say task wait 5 seconds. And so now we know it's going to pop up for at least 5 seconds, even if there's really nothing happening on the back end. It's kind of like this false, hey, the screen's loading. This is pretty cool. So we'll just wait 5 seconds, and then what I want to do is I need to put the GUI items back that I want, and so I like chat and backpack. So I'm going to go ahead and add those back. Add player GUI interface items, and we'll say so. That's the starter GUI thing, just like what we did up here. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this actually, and I'm going to put those two there, and I'm going to say true. Because I know I'm going to do true to both of these. You can just say all true, but that just puts everything, and maybe you didn't have everything to start with. I don't know. So basically, chat, I want chat, and I want backpack. There you go. So I'm just setting 2. If you just want to do all, you can just type all, and then just get rid of one of these lines and just do all, and that would be fine too. So we've added the GUI back. And now what I want to do is I'm going to destroy this loading screen so that it's no longer there. So now you can play the game, right? And so now we'll say string GUI destroy. Destroy the loading screen overlay. I didn't tell that screen, not screen. Loading screen overlay. So now what we should have is a loading screen that shows up for 5 seconds and disappears and lets you play the game. Let's try it. Give me the loading screen. There we go. My epic game. I don't know what's with the dumb camera. I'll have to set that in my options, but there you go. So now that kind of gives you a loading screen for your game. You can obviously expand on that, but that's a good start for having a loading screen in your game. Hope this video was useful for you guys and I wasn't too fast. Leave some comments in there if you'd like me to do something else, if you have any questions about this or other things in Roblox Studio. Thanks.